Okay, man, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go. Now, come on, now crank this motherfucker up.
Break it down like this.
Hello, Internet. Gino that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens. And today we're going deep under the sea. For SOMA, we played a horror game, and this one is fittingly on brand for us because it's very deep under the water, just like our Game of the Year awards, the Trenchies. So joining me, as always, to discuss all things robots and, I guess, personhood, and also the ocean, Pete Busby. Hey, Pete.
Hey. Yeah, except for the ocean bit, this was basically just like my grad school research all over again. So it's nice to come back into it. In honor of such a terrifying game, I have a terrifying fun fact for everybody today.
Oh, thank goodness.
So, yeah. This comes from a Bloomberg article. I'll just go ahead and read the title. The title of this Bloomberg article is, "Why are there suddenly so many car washes?" Here's the horrifying fact. Yeah, I know. I don't know if you thought about this, but there are. Yeah. So it turns out more car washes were built in the last decade than all preceding years combined. Not only that, but industry analysts expect the number to double again by 2030, which is horrifying to me.
What's the horrifying reason behind it?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. Thank you.
Oh,
Car washes are so lucrative is a new subscription-based business model. Like people pay
fuck
for
off.
Yep, $25
damn
a
it.
month for unlimited car washes, which, to compound the horror, is enticing private equity to get involved.
Oh, that's
flood the
always
market.
going to work out. That's always going to work out. Private equity, we all know this. Yeah.
Yeah, works for veterinarians,
That's incredible.
working for the healthcare system.
It works for the gaming industry. Oh, the whole thing is good and there's no downsides. Hi, I'm Jess O'Brien, also known as VoidBurger, and I'm here too.
Welcome to the show, Jess. Welcome back for all things spooky.
Yeah.
How is everything going over in Finland for folks who have not been keeping up?
Pretty crazy, weird. Moved to a different country. That was interesting. And it's also so my husband can also continue to be in the games industry, which seems like a really stupid idea to move to be in the games industry, which is the most tumultuous industry perhaps in the world right now. But Finland actually has like laws and stuff that says like you can't do the shit that keeps getting done to people in the American games industry and like some of the European games industry, which is just like sweeping layoffs, sudden all hands calls out of nowhere where you're informed that you've been laid off. You have till 2 p.m. to get all your shit from the office. Bye, bitch. There's laws that say you cannot do that to people in Finland. Yay, unions!
Yay, protection!
Yay! Civilization. So that part sounds cool so far. I don't know. We'll see if it shakes out all right after a certain, after, some years or so.
Have you consumed any Finnish food yet?
Let me think. I've been avoiding the salty licorice, the salmiakki.
Okay.
Don't want that. Okay. I'm gonna have to eat it eventually. Someone's gonna bully me into doing it.
Almost certainly.
Yeah, no one's forced me yet, which is very nice because I have met like a decent 10 or so Finnish people, and nobody has forced it down my throat yet. So I'm meeting nice Finnish people, I guess. But yeah, like I've had cloudberry jam and puisto. I don't know if I'm saying it right. It's a weird cheese. It's like a squeaky cheese, like a cheese curd situation. You're supposed to put the jam on the cheese, but I kind of like them separate better. I don't know. I'm not that...
A jammy cheese?
A jammy cheese, it just doesn't really compute in my head, really. I don't know.
I don't like that.
Interesting berry, the cloudberry.
Okay. What is its most common analog for those who are more familiar with American berries? Is it like a strawberry, like a blueberry, blackberry?
It really it looks like raspberry-ish in that it's like it looks like a golden raspberry. It tastes kind of more like a apricot. sort of is more like the taste. And it grows
Oh.
in swamps, so you can't like cultivate it en masse. Like there's no like cloudberry farms. You have to like harvest them, so that it's really expensive to get them and to have the jam. This little thing of jam was like friggin' €9 for like this eensy weensy thing of jam, and I was like, this better be the best fucking berry I've ever tasted. It okay,
And
it's
Sounds like
good.
another sounds like another solution for private equity. Yes, man.
Well, I mean, they made cranberries work, so I feel like if they found the
Monetize the
cloudberries,
swamps.
yes,
You know
we need to
why?
swampify more places.
You know why cranberry juice like got added to all like juices for a little while there? It's because they had
Cheap, I
No.
so
assume?
much cranberry juice. Yeah, well, they had so much cranberry juice left over from making craisins when like those were done popular that they just had to
Oh.
put it places.
Gotta do something with this shit.
This is
Yeah, man.
industrial craisin runoff.
Pretty much, basically, yeah.
Mmm,
That's amazing.
delicious.
That's incredible. Thank you for these are two great fun facts today, Pete. Thank you for staying up on this. So before we get started with the SOMA show, our normal housekeeping reminder, you can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. That's our email address. You can support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. I swear I'll have a tier soon for the new anime podcast, the Patreon exclusive anime podcast that Pete, you're involved with. And we put the first episode up on Fate Stay Night, which sounds like a bad show.
It is.
The one you watched. So I don't know if you've decided yet what the follow-up anime is going to be. Did y'all decide yet?
No, we don't have a definitive choice. We did run through the list of like potential
Okay.
ones we'd like to see at the end of the podcast, but we haven't picked one. My vote, Gino, one you're familiar with, revisiting Samurai Champloo.
Ooh, I've never seen the
Yes.
whole thing.
Good.
That's a shame.
I've watched a lot of it, but never all in sequence. And
No, yeah, never.
I just revisit the baseball episode because it's so good.
Oh, that is a good one. It's a good one.
I'm also in a similar boat with Cowboy Bebop. I somehow have not seen all of it.
Well,
despite,
thankfully, they
like-
got this new live action one on Netflix you can check out.
Yeah, true. That went over great.
And everyone loved it. So yeah, Patreon gets you access to our Discord. Before we do the Discord report, though, Jess, anything to plug? Anything for people who are following you that
yeah.
they should do?
If you don't know, I'm on a D&D actual play podcast with sound effects and music, so it's not boring, okay? And I edit it too, so you know it's good. But it's called Skulltanders. You should check it out. We got all sorts of famous people on it, except for, aside from me, really famous. But we've also got Cohen Edenfield, who you might know from the extremely viral Who's This Clown tweet, amongst others. And also Casey Green of This Is Fine Dog fame and so many other internet memes. So it's a funny show. I recommend it, but I'm biased, but you should try it out. Skulltenders.
Excellent. Wherever you can find podcasts.
Yeah, all sorts of places, your Apple Pods, your Spotify's. We got a website, skulltenders.com. We got a Patreon, all that sort of wheeling and dealing.
Excellent. All right, so back to the Discord report. Pete, you're in the Discord now. Did you see anything in there that?
Gosh, I did not prepare for this, Gino. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine.
So
It's a
focused
lot
on
of
car wash
Olympics.
facts.
We made. Okay, we made a getting political like assorted memery section because the political tweets were very strong, and we wanted to make sure that people had a place to do that. But it's a thread, so if you don't want to participate, you don't have to.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of coconut trees, a lot of just really bad commentary that was made recently in the last few weeks. That's been very active. We also made a VTuber thread fairly recently to quarantine the VTuber stuff out of other sections. So we've been making use of threads to make the Discord more usable for people who want to opt in for certain content, but not all of it. So yeah, that's a cool thing. And then there's been a lot of Olympic content. Pete, have you been watching the Olympics at all?
I've been staying up to date on it. I don't have Peacock, so I can't watch it.
Okay. That
Oh.
honestly a good call. Generally, I just have happened to have been hanging out with people who do have Peacock, so I've been
I know
staying up on it.
Pistol shooting's blowing up.
Pistol shooting is
Yes.
huge right now.
Yeah.
Did you see
Not
the
good for the
Turkish Pistol
US.
Man?
Yeah,
did
everyone
see
loves the
Turkish
Turkish
Pistol
pistol
Man.
man. The Japanese
saw
internet loves
Korean
him
Pistol
and is
Woman.
calling him like the Japanese internet is calling the Turkish pistol man like free user Oji-san because
Yes.
he like plays without it's like playing a game where you don't have to buy any of like the DLC or the add-ons. Like it's a freemium game and you play it without all that stuff, and that's hardcore. So they're referring to that. That's so cool.
Yes, because Pete, did you see this Turkish Man?
I did, and I didn't realize pistol shooting involves so much dumb glassware. Like,
Yeah, it doesn't
I
have
mean,
to though, obviously.
Doesn't have to apparently.
oh,
If you're
This guy
cool.
woke up and just decided to shoot some stuff.
Woke up, rolled out of bed, got a silver medal.
Yep. Yeah, so it's been a lot of Olympic stuff. What is your favorite, Jess? Have you followed the Olympics at all?
No, except for internet memes, basically.
Okay.
I'm not
Okay,
I'm not a sports lover, but once if sumo can ever enter the fray of international sport, I will probably be more interested and tune in then. But for now, the internet is functioning as a very accurate highlight reel of some of the things that are actually interesting. So
Okay. In that case, if you've only been following it, what is superior? Turkish man shooting, surfing man standing like perfectly vertical next to his board in that picture,
Mm.
or some sort of celebration. It's some sort of ridiculous nonsense celebration. Is there any GIF that has also been equally
Oh,
good?
I did see I think it was a fencing winner. Like she like took off her helmet and was just like screaming so happy and just like screaming and screaming and screaming, like fell to her knees and was screaming and crying and so happy. And I was just like, oh, good for you. You poked
Yeah,
somebody better than anybody else could.
yes. I really enjoy how every single person is just like a hairpin trigger away from erupting into tears at all times. And the
I love
second
that.
they're allowed to show human emotion again, it just all hits at once. And it seems to be very universal.
Ah,
Like every person is one step away from breaking down, either because they lost by half a second or won by half a second. And, nice universality of human experience.
it's beautiful.
For sure. My obsession of the week. I'm going to go with, oh, dang it. It's the Vampire Kid movie, Abigail. Abigail. Have
What is
either of you
Abigail?
seen this movie?
No.
Never
Oh.
heard of it.
Okay, I watched it last week. It is the premise. It's a kidnapping movie. There's a bunch of criminals. They've kidnapped a kid to hold her for ransom. But the kid's a vampire. So
That's a good premise.
they think that they are going to kidnap this 10-year-old and hold her up for ransom, but she a vampire, so she starts
Oh.
stalking and killing them one at a time.
Is she,
Gotcha, so-
is she a 10-year-old vampire, or is she a 300-year-old vampire that got turned when she was 10, like Kirsten Dunst in
Option B.
Interview with the Band? Okay.
Option B. And it's got some good, like, what are our vampire rules questions, like, okay, how do we kill them? Well, it depends. Are we doing Twilight vampires? Are we doing Interview with the Vampires? What are the rules here? And they're trying to figure that out. All of the people are dirtbags too, which is also pretty fun.
Love those.
Kidnapped a child.
So, would you consider this to be like kind of like a slasher? I guess.
It has
all these
definite slasher
dirtbags.
elements. It has slasher elements. It has some kind of heist movie elements because the house that they're in has some kind of heist movie things going on in it. It's got some definite camp. The little girl is a ballerina in addition to being a vampire. So she will do just like plies and stuff before ripping
Lovely.
someone's throat out, which is pretty great. And it's got great New York accents. If you want a character from Queens
Oh,
who's
hell yeah, I
just
do.
going real hard, it's got that for you. So I would recommend checking it out. It was on Peacock, which is why I watched it in between Olympic Games. But yeah, Abigail, check it out. All right, now turning our attention to the game at hand, SOMA. Pete, you picked it. Do you want to give a rundown of what SOMA is?
I will try. I think it's like Soma has some of the most story per square inch of like any game we've played in a long time. But basically, what happens is you start off in Simon.
Toronto. Yeah.
Simon, you're
Simon in
Simon living in
Toronto.
Toronto, and you're going in for a brain scan following a car accident in which you were involved and had some brain trauma, and it seems like your girlfriend, or at least someone you were very close to, died in the accident. So you go in to get a brain scan so they can come up with a treatment plan. Then there's sort of a smash cut, and you wake up, presumably as Simon, in a underwater research facility. Thence the horror commences. Basically, you trying to figure out, at least initially, what you're doing in this crazy underwater research facility and how you're going to get home to Toronto.
Yes. So the entire beginning of the game is you just kind of in your apartment trying to get to this brain scan on time. And then as soon as you get into the brain scanner, smash cut to waking up in an undersea research facility.
Pathos is the name of the facility.
And wouldn't you know it, the facility's gone bad.
Dang it.
It's full of robots that some of them they glow and they seem to be trying to kill you. And then some of them talk and think they're human.
Now, real Dead Space vibes.
For sure. So how did you feel about the initial like pathos reveal? Like the smash cut? How did that work for you, Pete?
It's tough to evaluate, right? Because the smash cut makes perfect sense in retrospect. It's like the further you go into the game and the more you understand what's happening, smash cut makes a lot of sense. Initially, my thought was brain trauma. Like, okay, clearly this is something going on with Simon's sort of strange brain. I'm pretty sure that scientist who recorded him was evil, considering they didn't have an office.
Yeah,
He
it
just
was
sort
really
of set up in
shady.
the lobby of some other building, right? They seem sketchy
Like
for
a
somebody who was
really,
scanning
really
my
shady
entire brain.
startup energy.
Yeah,
I did like that it was like
fact that it maintained possibilities.
Yeah, I liked that it was a rental office, but they still had a brain scanner in the back. Like you had to let yourself into this rental space, but they were able to set up a whole brain scan in the back room.
Experimental stuff. Right there. We're on the vanguard of science. Fully scanning the
Yes.
human mind.
Yeah, but feel free
And
to
the
leaf through our
doctor-
desk in the lobby.
Yeah.
The doctor, I think he's a doctor, the guy who scans your brain. I don't know
He's
if he was
not.
actually a doctor.
Wasn't he
Not.
like
He makes
a,
a
I mean,
point of
yeah, sorry, wasn't he like a grad student of some sort of measure?
Yeah.
I mean, it's been a couple years since I played Soma, so forgive me.
No, he says to Simon, "Thank you for helping me with my thesis." So
Yes.
he's a PhD candidate of some sort.
Yeah, and I just really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed that you can read through his emails, and he's just like, "We need to get this Simon guy in for the scan. He'd be perfect for the thesis." It's like, "Oh, cool. You're scanning me not because you really think you could save my life, but because you really need this sample for your thesis." And I guess we should say, like, Jess, do you remember why they're scanning the brain? Like, what's the thought process for scanning Simon's brain?
I believe it was to, if I remember right, because he suffered a traumatic brain injury. They wanted to, and he kind of had a time limit on his life until he, like, if I'm, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was like going to kill him. Like he had some sort of unique hemorrhaging situation where he could still walk around and do stuff, but he was like probably going to die. Uh, and this was to kind of like scan how the brain reacts to these types of injuries, if it can be saved. This is one of those like preliminary science things to like just get the whole lay of the land to see how this kind of injury affects a person and their brain and if they can be rescued from this. And I don't know if I can skip
Yeah,
ahead
broad
or
strokes.
not. Can
Broad
I?
strokes,
Okay.
yeah. They what they said was basically they take a scan of the brain and then they run a series of simulated treatments on the scan. So they're saying
Ah.
like, okay, we've got this copy. Now we're going to run it through, okay, drug treatment, okay, some sort of psychotherapy or physical therapy. We're going to run all these different plans of treatment against this copy of the brain. And
Mm.
whichever one the brain responds to the best, we'll do that in real life. And we won't use the other ones that look like they won't be promising.
So they'll
And so
waste your
by
time and you'll die. Yeah.
exactly, so by testing out like a bunch of simulated treatments, they will be able to eliminate the bad ones.
Mm.
And it's a cool concept. I like that they kind of gave a plausible reason for why this person would want a brain scan beyond just,
Mm.
he's kind of a sketchy doctor.
Yeah, like it makes Simon look a little less stupid for getting a brain scan in such a shady situation. Like he's probably going to die. Like what does he have to lose? Of course he would do something this desperate.
Yeah, for sure. He is dealing with a desperate doctor, and he himself is very desperate. And so his desperation leads to him waking up in an undersea facility, just like you would expect, a natural outcome potentially from having your brain scanned once. Um, so it's a complete non sequitur when you jump in, and um, it takes quite some time, I feel like, before you get any sort of bearings or any sort of interaction with another person or anything that seems like a person. Did you find the opening of the game, like we said, it was effective as a smash cut, but did you find it disorienting? Like, did you notice, Pete, that the game control, like you move different when you wake up in the facility? Like, did you notice any of the subtle differences between who you were controlling before and after?
I doubt it. I mean, that doesn't feel like something that I would notice. I was mostly concerned
Okay.
with how dark everything was, and I was getting annoyed that games are so dark these days. Now that
these
I'm old,
these days, 10 years ago.
yeah.
Something like
Forgot
that.
this
When did
game
this
was
come out
old.
again?
I want to say I want to say 14 or 17. So it would be either 7
Oh,
or 10 years ago.
okay, I was close. I
Yeah,
like
it
the
would.
intro a lot because I mean, like when I played Soma, I had seen trailers of it, and the trailers
Hmm.
obviously are not just going to be Simon in his apartment. They're going to show all the cool, like derelict research facility. They're going to tease all these robots and existential stuff and sci-fi vibes. So uh the intro of the game was more surprising to me than finally being in the facility. I say finally, like the intro was long. It's like not. It's like 15, 20 minutes long tops or something.
Hmm.
I don't know. Again, it's been a couple years since I played it. But I think they did a good job like establishing Simon's what normal is for Simon to begin with. Even though it's like this
Yep.
is a new normal, he had a horrible accident. His girlfriend or wife or something is dead and he's grieving and he doesn't care what happens to him and he might die. And it's like this is how you introduce this character to the player in this desperate situation, but it's pretty normal otherwise. This is Earth, this is Toronto. It's not that weird. They even had like a short scene of him commuting to the like appointment, right? Like have a little
Yep.
scene like
You're
when
on a
you're on the
train.
subway. Yeah, you're on like a train.
Yep.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, they didn't have to do that. They could have like jump cut me there. So I think they did a good job establishing like how normal everything was before you wake up in this really fucked up weird situation. So it was a really cool rug pull, even though I knew we were going to end up in a sci-fi research facility.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed like the subtle things that when I talked about like the difference in movement, like Simon's footfall is super loud when you wake up in the facility.
Oh
It's
yeah.
it's kind of stilted when you wake up in the facility. He moves pretty smoothly when he's in his apartment. Um, you see human arms at first when you are waking up in the facility. You see normal human arms, but everything about how he moves, like the heavy footfalls, his run speed. Um, Everything's just a little off. And from all that stuff, I'm like, Simon, you're a robot, my guy. Like,
My
what?
guy.
Why do I? Why do I see? Why do I see human hands? What's going on here? It's clear that something's different about you. There's no
Uh,
mirrors. They do a good job of showing you no
mm,
mirrors, which
mhm.
I think is important too. But you see human hands until I think you get out of kind of like the first section. Then Simon's hands become robot hands. But I guess they're trying to go with, the human mind is compensating, right? Like the
Yeah.
human brain uh, processes visual data based on what it expects to see. And for a while, it expects to see human hands, so it shows you human hands.
Mhm. I also I was
Um,
talking to a friend of mine about SOMA some other like couple months ago or something, and they were mentioning that they had some friend of theirs that was complaining about the like tutorial like section and how like man this guy can't find his keys like all this sort of stuff, and then like complaining also about like oh like you see your human hands first and da 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 like why is this guy so dumb, how come he can't clue in that he's a robot sooner, and it's like my guy Simon has a traumatic brain injury. Do you really expect him to be on the ball with everything right now? Like, that's a totally valid in-universe. He doesn't know where his fucking keys are, dude. Like,
yeah, I mean, there's the brain injury, and I don't know if you woke up in a body that wasn't your own. Do you think your brain would be able to handle it?
right?
Like, maybe not. Who knows? And I think that this game plays a lot with that space of like, okay, just because you were a human mind, if we put you in a body that is not a human body, how would you respond? And you start seeing stuff that's a little bit alarming, let's say. So before we get into spoiler territory, because I feel like anything past here is spoiler territory.
Yeah.
Um, what do you think of just like mechanically? Like this is who's the developer? I'm sorry, off the top of
Frictional?
my head. Frictional, yeah,
I
Frictional
think.
Games. They're the amnesia people.
Mm.
Um, so what did you think of like the enemy gameplay? Like just I feel like the basic gameplay loop is adventure game, find stuff, use item on thing. And then the enemy encounters are very amnesia adjacent. You can't fight anything. It's all about hiding and not looking at enemies. Did you think it worked in this underwater space instead of a kind of fantasy space?
Um.
I
Oh, you go
I
ahead.
did the not looking. Yeah, I did think the not looking worked because like this whole game is about sort of not looking at things too closely in the way we just talked about, right? So like if you woke up in a different body, let's not dwell with that
It's
much. Let's just sort of like move on from it.
denial.
And there is
Yeah.
something creepy, yeah, denial. There's something very creepy about not knowing where an enemy is that you can't fight or kill or anything. You just have to hope that it hasn't seen you while you stare at a corner.
Yeah, there's
My
something very effective about something breathing right behind you.
my complaint about that format is that I like looking at monsters because they look really fucking cool. So I remember, I think I streamed this. I'm pretty sure I streamed this. I remember like being in some sort of like a basementy sort of area with one of these really cool guys, and I was just like, I'm just gonna run up to this guy and get my fill of him because I want to look at this dude. He's awesome looking. Oh my god. And then like I got it out of my system. It's like, okay, now I'll try to sneak around him. Like I know they don't want me to look at him, but he's cool.
Yeah, I like that when you look at the enemies, there's kind of a video distortion effect that they use when you look at anything that's too
Mhm.
upsetting.
Mhm.
So if you look at the enemies, if you look at there's sometimes like bodies or I guess it might be spoilery, but there's some things that are like maybe alive, maybe not, that you can look at. And whenever you do, you get a video graphical error kind of start happening. And they use that video graphical error as kind of, I mean, they don't have a sanity meter like Amnesia does, um, but you can tell that Simon's mind can't handle the thing he's looking at. And so, because he's in a robot brain, it's kind of manifesting itself in a computer glitch. I thought it was a nice metaphor, like to show you that it's still a human mind that's taking damage, but it's taking damage in a way a machine would.
Mm.
Um, and it looks visually quite cool. What do you think of the Jess, the effect of when you take damage, you get more distorted computer graphics. Did you find that overwhelming?
I don't super remember. I don't super remember being annoyed by it. But I'm kind of like I'm somebody that like when I play a horror game and it does the little like calibration at the start for how dark it's supposed to be, I never listen to that. Like, oh, make it so you can barely see this logo. It's like, no, no, no. I want to see that fucking logo. Like, everything's way too dark. So I think you can shut off all of these effects if they are bothering you. And I know they added
You can.
enemy free mode at some later point as well. For people that were too stressed by the creepy crawlies that are following you around.
Yes.
But yeah, I don't super remember being annoyed by that. I think I was mostly like, ooh, neat robot shit.
Yeah, they added a mode where you don't take damage from enemies, which is
Oh,
so
okay,
you
okay.
can just look at them, which is cool. And yeah, you can turn off. Like what happens is the more damage you get, the more you get kind of a graphical breakdown. So like instead of seeing one object, you'll see like a red, green, blue, just kind of like all
Oh,
a few centimeters
mm,
away from each other version of the
chrom-
thing.
it's called chromatic aberration.
Ah,
Ooh.
good. Good that you had the term. Yeah, you start getting more and more chromatic aberrations, and the worse your damage, the more pronounced that effect is. I found like when I was super damaged, it started getting kind of annoying because until you heal up, it can be kind of difficult to even see where you're going because of how much visual stuff is being thrown at you. But thankfully, the game has a pretty good amount of healing. Speaking of healing, Pete, how did you enjoy the healing mechanic? If you
So
remember.
this goes back to the thing about yeah. This will go back to my point about the damage too. I want to make similarly is that it feels like most of the times I died were just one hit kills anyway,
Mm.
right? Like when the big fish come get you or the creepy crawlies come get you, it's pretty much a one shot deal. So I mean, in terms of like healing damage, I won't even call it combat because there's no combat. You know, it was those one hit kills that mostly were relevant to me overall anyway.
You mentioning the big fish immediately reminded me, yes, I did stream this whole thing because that was clipped. My reaction to that fish because it scared the fucking shit out of me. I gotta hunt that clip down. That was funny as hell.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that fish gets you. Um,
uh,
the the healing for me, there's these little nodes, orifices, I guess, anuses, sphincters,
sphincters.
and
Yeah.
and you need to plug your
Robot butts.
you plug your hand into the robot butt, and then it shoots you up with health juice. And I didn't like it. It was upsetting to do
Ugh,
every time I needed to.
I love it.
But
Perfect. It's perfect.
I I I was like, this seems like an upsetting thing that we're doing here. This can't be good. Is this game going to penalize me for healing? Like it seemed
Exactly.
like that was in the realm of possibility. Thankfully, it didn't. But it constantly made me suspicious. And I definitely the only times I didn't really get one hit killed were when I accidentally jumped off a ladder instead of climbing all the way to the bottom of the ladder. That damages you more than you'd think.
Forgot you could do that.
Um, yeah, so in terms of now, I think we can go full spoilers because anything beyond like the very first section is kind of spoilers. You get early on, I think before you even run into Catherine, who is your secondary, Catherine Chun, who's like your secondary character. You do run into a robot that's talking like a person, and you have to unplug it. Pete, were you immediately suspicious of the robots in this game?
Oh, 1,000,000%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was suspicious of the robots, the people, the fish. Like, I didn't think anybody was who they said they were the second I woke up in Pathos.
Did you
Yeah,
think the
so
entire ride in Pathos was maybe like some sort of like a dying dream or something of the sort?
Oh, sure. I thought it was some like effect of the scan
Mhm.
or the treatment. I thought Shady Doctor Guy
Yeah.
put me in Pathos and was like, let's see how Simon handles this.
Yeah, I definitely thought that it was all in Simon's head, but was some sort of effect of the scan itself, not that he was physically in a space. At least until he saw robot hands, and then I was like, "Ooh, we're doing something even cooler
Yeah.
than visions of a dying mind."
I think the point that got me to go like, oh shit, this is way cooler than if it's some sort of like hallucination or dying dream or something like that, or guilt-ridden trip of the mind. Was when, and this is a spoiler, but we're in spoiler territory, so it's okay. Was when it became apparent, and I forget how early on this happens or not, but I think it's like within the first I want to say like 40 minutes of the game, maybe. Correct me if I'm wrong. But when you first learn that like Earth is fucked,
Yes,
like
yeah.
Earth
That's in
is
the first
super
hour.
fucked. We are all super fucked. I was like, oh, that's way interesting. They better not make this a dream. I'm gonna be pissed off at that point.
Yeah, for sure. So, Jess, do you want to set up how Earth got fucked? Like, what
I
is?
forget exactly how Earth got fucked.
Okay,
Actually, was it a meteor or
it was a
something of the
comet.
sort? A comet,
Yeah.
yeah. I
So,
remember more
Pete,
about this game than I thought. Actually, I'm pretty pleased with myself for having not played it for a very long time. It stuck with me. Nice. It was a comet, and it fucked up everybody except for people in very desolate, distant places, like a underwater facility in the bottom of like the Mariana Trench or some shit. I don't know. It's very deep.
yes. So, Pete, do you remember why this facility even exists? Like, what is its purpose?
Yes. So Pathos is a research facility that does three things specifically, and I can't remember the other two, but I remember one was turbulence. And I was like, why is an underwater research facility studying turbulence? But it's basically like a mining facility that eventually branched out into other adjacent, creepier fields.
Yes, and they
It's
also
well, I mean, at heart too, it's a giant cannon.
yes, it is a
Mm.
giant satellite cannon. So that is its main
I,
money making
I really
scheme.
buried the lead on that one.
Is that they shoot out from the ocean? They shoot satellites into orbit. Like that
You
is
know,
their main function is to shoot satellites,
that
and
seems
then they also
harder
do
to
research.
do. That seems harder to do from the ocean. What was the gimmick with that? Because like you have to fight the
I,
force of all the water and the water resistance plus air resistance to get out of orbit. I forget the gimmick for why it was like for some
right.
reason good to do this from the deepest oceans.
I think it was like they have a rail
I think
gun.
yeah,
They have a
it's a
rail gun.
runway thing. They needed the space.
Huh.
Yeah, they needed the distance, and the rail gun needed to be really long.
Hmm.
Um, and then they basically launch stuff into orbit. And so, like, you are kind of working your way through multiple facilities. Like, some of these facilities are studying stuff. Some of these facilities are just, keeping the lights on with the railgun. But there are different crews kind of working in each of the facilities, and they're all connected to one another. And they're all Greek letters: Alpha, Tau, Omega. And Alpha is the secret one that no one believes is real, but maybe it is. Um, and pretty early on, you come to realize that, okay, we need to launch this thing. Well, I guess even before we get to that twist, like you meet Catherine Chun pretty early on. Like, you find this person who's she radios to you. She's like, hey, I'm a person. Like, hey, come meet me at, I think is it Tau, the one that she's at, or Lambda? She's at one of the early
Oh
facilities.
gosh,
Don't
Um,
remember.
yeah, I forget the order.
I think it's Lambda, but
Either one of them.
she's
They're all
at
Greek anyway.
yeah, it's all Greek anyway. She's at one of the early facilities, and up until this point, like, everyone who's you meet one talking robot, who you very much have to kill, and he does not like that you're killing him, and he also doesn't believe he's a robot. You've, I think, met two robots before that. You meet one guy who, you find his corpse, and then you find a robot that claims to be the corpse. So I think from that point on, I was pretty much like, okay, brain scans are afoot. And then you meet a robot that it's just kind of vibing out, and then you unplug it, and it says, "Why'd you do that? I was happy." So So those are kind of your two experiences with things that talk that probably you feel like they shouldn't. Um, and then you meet Catherine, who says, "Yeah, I'm a person. Come and get me." And Pete, do you remember how the interaction with Catherine goes the first time you meet her?
Yeah, you walk in and Catherine's more or less a vacuum cleaner looking thing that's on the ground because somebody knocked her over. And Catherine is very adamant that she did not lie to you, that she is in fact a person. And Simon is not having it, which, reasonable.
And I like her answer. She's like, "Have you looked at yourself recently?" And he's like, "No, there's no mirrors here."
Like you're a diving suit with some electronics attached.
Yeah. So at this point, when you meet Catherine, she's like, "Hey, take my chip out of here, and plug me into your basically fancy PDA device that you're using to unlock doors, and I'll be your computer buddy." So like, you get rid of the default chip on your little Pocket Pal, and you replace it with Catherine, the person. Um, which leads to her kind of having a pretty unique experience. If you remember, Jess, what being in a PDA device does to Catherine.
I think I mostly remember that, like, her, entire existence and consciousness being on a chip. The way that time works is that only when she is plugged in and active does
Mhm.
time flow. So it's kind of like a jump cut to wherever she is now. And she seems mostly okay with that, which is really uncanny, and I love that about her.
Yes. Yeah, so she only exists as long as that thing is plugged into a larger machine. She can't really think when she's just in your pocket. She doesn't perceive time. She is only has eyes when she's plugged into something with sensors. She only has ears when she's plugged into something with receivers. So when she's just in your pocket, she can't perceive anything.
Doesn't
Um,
exist functionally.
Exactly. And it's interesting also when you plug her into different facilities, depending on what the facility does and what it's got access to, she has more or less sense. Some places, if you're in a place with low power, she's like, it feels like I'm in a tin can, or if you plug her into a whole facility, she's like, wow, I can see everything. There's so much going on. Um, so I think the developers do a really good job of trying to depict what being in I guess a chip would be like. You are more or less capable of thinking depending on what you're actually plugged into in this world, which is kind of cool. And Catherine, when you meet her, kind of gives you the big exposition on what your goal of the game is. Pete, how are we going to save humanity? How are we going to achieve some sort of goal?
Yep, it's a classic save humanity system. We've brain scanned all the scientists, or I shouldn't say all. We've brain scanned many scientists in Pathos, and we are then going to upload them to a virtual paradise called the Ark, which we will then shoot into space. And for some reason, this is supposed to make everybody feel better about the apocalypse.
Because humanity continues on in a form. And then by the end of the game, you're like, is that worth
I don't know if
it?
I care.
Is that worth that? Is that even
Yeah.
humanity? What am I doing this for? Does this matter?
Yeah. And that is definitely the central question that the game is asking is, what is the goal that you're achieving even good? How is it different than what's going on in the facility anyway? What is carrying on humanity? But yeah, the idea is to put everyone onto,
And who survives?
yes, everyone's trying to get put onto this arc.
There's
The
like
arc
medical
is,
consent issues going on too, which is
oh,
interesting.
for sure, 100% medical consent issues. Um, and the arc,
There's also like a subcult of continuity.
yeah, next area you go to has a full-on continuityist problem. What is the continuity problem, Pete? If you could summarize it.
Oh, I would love to, Gino. Thank you for throwing this to me. So we get to once again talk about one of Deep Listen's favorite subjects, the Ship of Theseus.
Hey, love that boat.
Yep. So for everybody who doesn't know, the Ship of Theseus is a philosophical problem where Theseus is rebuilding his ship taking one piece off and putting one piece back on. And the question at the end is this still the Ship of Theseus? But this relates to a more specific philosophical theory called the closest continuer theorem. Basically, that is a response to the Ship of Theseus problem that says, yes, this is the Ship of Theseus because it's the closest continuer in the line of existence, right? We can point to it and say this is closest to what was the previous Ship of Theseus, so this is still the Ship of Theseus. Now, in this case, you can run it with people too. So the classic example is you take somebody in for brain surgery and you cut their brain in half. And you take the left side and you put it in one thing, and you take the right side and put it in another. And somehow half their brain works just as well as a whole brain. So then the question is, which one of those is the person? So after Gino gets his brain cut in half and put in two bodies, which one is the real Gino? And the answer is, if at least according to the theorem, if both survive, neither is Gino. But if one dies, the surviving member is Gino because it's the closest continuer. Whereas if the two Genos tie, there is no closest continuer. With me so far?
So how does this relate to SOMA?
So the continuity cult. Yes, exactly. The continuity cult says the only way the person put on the ark would still be me, the only way I would survive is if the person on the ark is the closest continuer. So the second I get my brain scanned, I need to kill myself, or my previous body needs to kill itself. It's hard to even
My
say
consciousness
who's killing
won't be
whom, but
transferred.
either way,
Yeah.
body has to die.
And this is also
Yeah,
similar to
exactly.
like
So you need to create
this
a
is also
closest
similar to like
continuer.
your classic Star Trek transporter Ship of Theseus problem, where it's like, okay, you're technically just remolecularized. Wow, that's a really hard word to say. Remolecularizing somebody from scratch. Is that still the same person, or who believes them to
Mhm.
be the same person that got transported in the first place? And that arises all sorts of teleporter accidents where clones happen. So that's fun. But basically, the philosophy dilemma of this game can be crudely summoned up with copy and paste. Is it still me if it's copy and pasted me?
Yes. Yeah. So
It's also the ending of The Prestige.
Oh, that's true. Yes, yes. Love the prestige.
Yep.
yes, I just really enjoy. So this game, they have brain scan technology. So they are scanning a brain and getting a copy of it at a discrete moment in time. There is no ability to transfer minds from one thing to another. Transferring just means you took a copy from one body and then moved it to another body. And Simon has a real problem with this and understanding it. It will come to a head later.
At
It's
all.
funny because it's like, okay, he's got brain damage, ease off him, but also like Simon is the protagonist, and a lot of gamers will not understand a philosophical concept unless it is hammered the fuck into them over and over and over again. So Simon seems like the world's biggest idiot many times in this. And it's like, man, I don't know how many people know like how little certain gamers pay attention and how much you do have to reiterate things many times. And people were still pissed off at the ending, mind you. I saw people being pissed off about that. It's like they warned you like 7 times about this.
He's just a simple
That was the
He's
whole
just a simple game store employee from Toronto. What's he supposed to know about all this stuff? But yeah, he it's foreshadowed by the continualists a lot in the early game. But like their concept is if my physical body continues to live, then the version of me on the Ark is less real. Because if there's a version of me who's alive in the station, then the version of me that wakes up in the Ark, I won't wake up in the Ark. I won't be the one to wake up in the Ark.
It won't be my experience, my consciousness.
Exactly. So that's kind of the big issue that they have, and you find a lot of people who have killed themselves basically.
And you know, like straight up, like when you first just like explain this, it sounds fucking bonkers. Why would anybody do this? But it's like it is the end of the world. You're not gonna live anyway. I kind of understand why people might just want to might
Yeah,
just want to
shoot your
shoot their
shot.
shot and go out on their own terms. So it's like it sounds insane, but it's like under the dire circumstances here, it's not the craziest thing to try out.
If you could come up with a morally justifiable reason to opt out of being in the apocalypse, I feel like that makes some sense.
Mm.
And it leads to drama amongst the remaining people, because Catherine created the brain scans, created the concept of the arc, and so you can find a lot of corpses, and one of the mechanics we didn't really talk about is you can hack corpses to experience their last moments. Pete, do you remember the reason why you can hack corpses?
Oh God, it's some like electro thing. Like they have impulses and you have impulses. My eyes glazed
Uh,
over when we weren't talking about.
They've got a
thoughts.
black box, basically. They got a little computer in their head that records thoughts and their moments. So you hack the black box to basically figure out what happened to them when they died. And you can find a lot of drama, just like, hey, Catherine, because you started doing the brain scans, people started killing themselves. What the hell? I blame you. There's a lot of infighting because no one's in control, and they don't like it. But yeah, you find a ton of corpses. It's straight up BioShock style, except instead of people having scrawled things in their own blood, you hack their brains to figure out what happened, which I think is a nice touch, honestly.
Yeah.
Better that than audio logs.
I like it. Makes more sense.
For sure. And I like that the hacking is kind of explained as, like, Simon, you're in a new body, right? Like, this is something that your new body can do. And you perceive it like an audio log, but that's because that's all your human mind can understand. But because you're in a robot body, you can access data like a robot could. So it's a nice synthesis. I guess this is another thing about his body. Did y'all notice that he still makes breathing noises?
Yeah,
he's
he does,
running?
doesn't he? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
love
like
that.
that.
That's great.
Yeah, he still makes like exhaustion noises. He never slows down. He never actually gets fatigued, but he makes fatigue sounds because that's what he expects to
You're
need to do.
used to doing it all your life. Why wouldn't you keep doing it by habit?
Yeah, it's cool. Lots of little nice touches, I think. So we pretty quickly after this get some information about an object called the WoW, a machine called the WoW. Jess, do you remember?
WAU.
Do you remember what this thing is?
It is some sort of supercomputer, I believe, that facilitated shit around the research facility, like on a large scale of some sort. But
Mm-hmm.
it got corrupted by something. Something bad happened to the web. I forget what it stands for. WAU.
That's the Warden unit.
Oh, is that it? Warden Autonomous Unit, something like that.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Something like that. It's
Yeah.
an AI. It's basically an AI that ran the ship, or all of these different facilities, and this AI gets corrupted basically. And by corrupted, it has one directive. Its primary directive is to keep everyone alive. Like that's its guiding light.
By any
And
means necessary.
it takes its
Would you believe that doesn't work
job
out?
very seriously.
Would you believe a
Um,
computer interpreted its instructions too literally? Uh-oh.
Yeah, so Pete, how does it keep life alive by any means necessary? What are some examples, I should say?
Mostly by yeah, mostly by un unconsented to medical devices implanted in your body. Like you keep finding people basically attached to permanent horrific
Mm.
dialysis machines.
Yeah. Yeah, so most of the people, whoever didn't commit suicide or wasn't murdered, um, basically are hooked up to some sort of electrical plug. Um, I think the first person you find is the most extreme because they're conscious, but they have lungs like made of metal sticking out of them that are breathing for them. And so basically everyone you run into is on some sort of horrific life support. Um, Did either of you have the experience of getting caught by a robot and getting plugged into the WoW? Or was I the only? I think I might have been the only person who experienced this.
Yeah, when you told me about that, I was like, "Oh shit, what can happen? That's dope." I don't know if that happened to me. I don't remember it.
Uh, yeah, is that where you have your minor sort of like dream
Yes.
sequence
Yeah. Do you remember what happens in that dream sequence? So you can get caught.
where you're on a
In I think like the second or third monster. If you get caught by it, it's like a humanoid monster. Um, you have this dream sequence. Do you remember how that looks, Pete?
Yeah, I just remember being like, it's basically like a halcyon sort of like golden light, and Amy's like, "You can stay here, you can be with me, more or less," and then you break out of your electro cocoon and you're back in Pathos.
Yeah. So this is basically if you get caught by one of the WoW's monsters, basically, um, in that section, you get plugged in and it puts you back in Toronto, back in your apartment with Amy alive. So your girlfriend is back alive, but everything looks slightly off. Everything's a little bit wrong. Um, but I think that this is to show us like what is it like for the people who are on suspended animation or on life support. It's not just that they're trapped in this shell of a body. They're being fed some sort of memory that is supposed to at least be comfortable. So I guess the question is like, is it better to be dead than to be trapped in eternal life, reliving a memory that's clearly fake?
Is that
Mhm.
living?
Yeah, or what's the difference between what the WoW is doing and what the Arc will be? Like, if it's just fidelity of simulation, like how
And
relevant
like,
is
who are
that?
you to decide for anybody else? Like,
Yes.
why are you the arbiter of like this is cruel? I'm going to kill them. You know?
Yeah, and you are given so the early game you don't have a choice about unplugging things. Like there's the first two robots that you run into, they have power that you need to move on to the next section of the game. So you don't have any choice. You do eventually start running into people and robots that you do have a choice about unplugging. Um, and the actually also the first human you run into you have to unplug, and they also beg you to kill them. Um, but you do run into a robot outside of I think Tau that is alive, doesn't realize she's a robot, and she says hello. She's sane, but you can unplug her if you choose to. Did either of you unplug her?
I don't remember this robot. Is this the one? I remember one that was a little like submarine.
Oh, the little submarine robot's great.
I don't think it's the same one.
It's a different
I really
version, yeah.
He
didn't.
is cute.
I really didn't remember.
Yeah.
I don't remember a lot of individual robots, I guess, except the submarine left an impression on me.
Pete, did you unplug this lady? Did you even see her or meet her? You could walk past her and not see her.
Uh, I, yeah, yeah. I don't recall meeting her either. I will say everybody I ran into that I could unplug got unplugged. I left no survivors.
Care to explain, you monster?
I know, right? So in my mind, the Arc is like I also wouldn't
Mhm,
go on the Arc. Like I wouldn't get my brain scanned. So in my mind, all of these things were functionally
mm,
equivalent and they all
mhm.
shouldn't exist.
Okay. Yeah,
Fair.
my opinion changed. So at first I was like, okay, we need to preserve all life, right? Like this person, if they're a robot, even if they're alive, like as long as they're alive, there's a chance, right? So you're saying there's a chance.
Mhm,
Um, and
mhm,
this person, like they were talking, they were sane. You were the first person they'd seen in several days, I think. So it seems like the facility has been going to shit for like not that long in realistic time. Like it's maybe months or years, but not like decades. Um, so I was thinking, okay, maybe something can help this person. Um, but she does say like you're the first person I've seen. What's going on? Like how's it going? And then you realize like, oh, she's at the bottom of the ocean, and there's never going to be another person to talk to, and she can't move.
mm.
And she's awake. She's not
Yeah, that's
like
bad.
unconscious. So she's just basically trapped at the bottom of the ocean with a flashlight showing her like 10 feet in front of her. And eventually these flashlights are going to go out, probably. And then she's just going to be trapped in a waking nightmare.
That's
So
bad.
I think
I
I
probably
probably
unplugged
should have
her.
unplugged her. I
I
probably
probably
should have
unplugged her.
unplugged her.
Yeah. Mhm.
My stupid optimism was like, okay, if the life finds a way,
You've
but
doomed
for
her
good
with your
this time.
stupid optimism.
Yes. But yeah,
Your decision was made on much more humanitarian
Mm.
grounds than mine. I was like, ontologically and philosophically, I have a problem with this.
I mean,
existence."
isn't that a bit
Murdered her. And Gina's like, well,
isn't
what's
that a
this
bit
like for her?
humanitarian in its own sense if you twist it a little bit? I think this whole game does a really good job of kind of putting the player into a fairly harrowing medical ethics quandary time and time again, where you
Mm.
usually question, am I doing the right thing? Was the last thing I did the right thing? I felt a lot more sure about that one, but was that wrong to do? And I feel like it's a tricky thing to write. And it's the acting in this game is incredible, by the way. I remember the voice acting being like incredibly convincing and naturalistic sounding. Uh, and if it wasn't, it would be harder to relate to these, freaks and robots and stuff like that, if they didn't sound like, convincingly like human beings. Um, but like, it's really difficult to write this sort of stuff without getting uncomfortably close to like ableist adjacent stuff, eugenics adjacent stuff. And I think it did a really good job. I think, if I remember correctly, steering pretty well clear of those implications while still making the player like genuinely uncomfortable at these dilemmas.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, it did, I think, a pretty good job because there's a consent question, right, on all of these.
Mm,
You are always making the choice for these. You are making the choice for these people almost all of the time. Um, and the most that most of these characters you encounter can do is beg for death,
yeah.
or beg you to let them live, but they have no choice in whether you do it or not.
Yeah,
So
is there a sanctity to this kind of life? Is there a dignity to this kind of life? Is all life worth preserving? Like that you can get into some hairy corners if you keep like asking those questions.
yes, yeah, for sure. And I think that the game does a good job of hearing out a lot of sides of this, right? Like I think it's got things to say about euthanasia, for
Mm-hmm.
sure. And it comes down in a lot of ways. And I think, Pete, when I was talking about this game before we recorded with you a little bit, um, I was saying that in this game, it really kind of asks, what's a life worth living? What is a life? Because you've got robots that think they're alive. You've got people who are stuck in suspended animation. You've got programs that get blinked into existence and blinked out of existence, but as long as they're in existence, they think they're alive. And for the most part, the people that you're dealing with are scans or reproductions, and any living person who had a choice, like unmodified person, right? Just normal human being who
Mm.
had a choice whether to live or not, chose death, right?
Hmm.
So
Seemingly.
your own seemingly everyone who had a choice chose death, and the people that are left have some version of no choice.
Mm.
And I think that says a lot, right? Like the people who had agency, who got to assess the situation calmly. And the last unmodified person you run into also begs you to kill them, because existing this way is not right.
Yeah.
Which I think it's a pretty interesting thing.
This
Yeah.
It is. I think it's also complicated by Simon and to a lesser extent Amy, because you never really hear from
Hmm.
Amy. So you have two characters that didn't really get any warning for their mortality. And I mean, granted, Simon doesn't know what the eventual scan's going to be used for, what is life going to be like. But for somebody who didn't have real agency over their own death, he's very grateful for the scan and
Mm.
he embraces it. So it also asks sort of what happens, like how is agency involved in this, such that if you can choose death, you're a lot happier with it than if you
And
can't.
if I remember right, you do find out what happened to original Simon. he died like a couple weeks after the brain scan.
Yep. Yeah, and so for him, being trapped in this diving suit contraption is a second lease on life, because original Simon didn't get to go on, but he did. The Simon you're controlling. Oh, I feel like we should get to, like, how did Simon get on the ship in the first place? Pete, do you remember how Simon got there, or how a guy from Toronto ended up on this facility in the first place?
So I don't remember exactly how the company like got ownership of Simon's recording, but he was more or less like a template. Like he was like the stock photo in their library that they were like building things
Yes.
from.
Microsoft Sam.
Yes, he is Times New Roman for your brain scan software. He is the default thing that just comes with the machine, and he basically got installed. And it's important to say we don't find out who the hell built Simon.
Mm.
We presume it's the WoW who does it, but eventually you get your body scanned, and Simon is a diving suit with a corpse in it, full of this gel, this like miracle gel that can make any computer work, as
It's
long
like
as the WoW is
gray
controlling it.
gray goo sort of situation, right?
Yeah,
Structure gel,
Structured gel.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
MacGuffin juice. It makes anything work. But yeah, Simon is.
So I assumed the structured gel came on the comet, but I might have just been like projecting for reasons to
Yeah, I don't
add
remember
there.
that being
No, I
a
think that
thing.
it's an innovation. They said it's the future. They invented some sort of gel that can fix
Okay.
anything as long as it's got electric charge in it, and the WoW can
Nanomachines.
manipulate it. Yeah, exactly. Nanomachines. Um, but yeah, I like that. What Catherine posits is that Simon hasn't gone insane because he's still in a human. He's in a way in a human body. I mean, it's a headless corpse with a camera plugged into the top, basically. Um, but because there's a corpse involved, he at least is manipulating a human body, and
Mm.
so it's more familiar to him.
Close enough.
Exactly, he's more mentally sound than the people who are in actual robots.
I think just
Um,
being bipedal helps. Like everyone else is like some sort of monstrous thing. Like how many like bipedal robots do you run into in this game?
that still have both of their legs.
Yeah,
Um,
that can like walk around like a person. Like, I think Simon's the only one basically. If I remember
pre-
right. I don't know.
there are some like WoW monsters that are corpses that are all mutated.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Like those seem different. Those don't
yeah,
seem yeah.
those knew what it was like to be human and could tell that they aren't. Um,
Mm.
yeah, I don't think you run into any bipedal robots that are still sane. Because the WoW, like, for as much as it's trying to keep people alive, you do find some facilities that say like, hey, the WoW's kind of like a cancer, so like it can keep you alive for a little bit, but at a certain point, it destroys your motor functions and starts messing with you. So the longer you're stuck like that, the more it's going to degrade you over time.
Mm.
So the people who got wowified early, like they are very insane by the time you meet them. Um, did you pick up on what was going on with the doctor, Dr. Hart, I believe, who created the WoW? Like, there's a facility
Uh,
where everyone's got no brain, got no heads.
I forget.
Pete, did you get the explanation for why there's a bunch of headless corpses?
I think the only memo I remember is when they said basically let let the WoW do whatever it wants, completely unfettered. And again, how could that possibly go
Science.
wrong?
Yeah, so from what I can tell, like there's one facility where everyone's headless corpses. And what happened was Dr. Hart, who created the WoW, like gets brought back injured and is like dying. And people in the facility, like as he's getting sicker, people in the facility are starting to have headaches. And then eventually the WoW blows all of their heads up. It overloads all of their black boxes and explodes all of their heads.
Oh.
And it seems like it's experiencing grief
Why?
for its creator being injured.
Oh.
And some of the folks in the recordings are like, well, AI can't experience grief. And then You hear a pop sound.
I'll show you.
Yeah, so like I thought the headless corpse thing, I thought it was going to be a revelation that like, you're not even the first Simon, right? Because you're a headless corpse with a robot in it. So like all these headless corpses, maybe they were previous Simons or something. But it seems that the WoW blew up everyone's heads. But in this facility, you find one corpse trapped in a diving suit, and that corpse, you get to make a new Simon.
Lucky us.
How does that Ship of Theseus go?
Lucky.
Yeah, that Ship of Theseus isn't. The game does it interestingly because you jump into new Simon. So from your perspective, you're the closest continuer and thus still Simon. But there's still another Simon sitting in the chair, and this is when he starts to grasp that, oh, you can't extract minds, you can only copy them, and you get the choice whether or not to kill Simon because he'll wake up alone in this facility, or leave him there more or less.
I think I killed him.
PG.
I mean, I said I killed everybody.
I didn't kill him because I couldn't find the kill button. But also, I was like, hey, there's another Simon. If my excursion with current Simon goes bad, old Simon can figure it out. He's a smart guy. He's from Toronto.
Not without Catherine, though, to open all the doors and stuff. So when he wakes up, he's just going to be trapped in this chair, right?
Look, with infinite time, because that's all he'll have.
Eternity. Oh God, that's awful.
He'll figure it out because he's trapped there.
Oh God. Oh geez.
He'll figure it out. He's a smart guy. He runs a comic book store. He knows sci-fi. Yeah, so probably I should have killed him. Up to you. But like maybe he begs for death, let's say. But yeah, you get a hot new body, and that lets you go into the even lower reaches. And at this point, you kind of get exposed to Dr. Hart, who still alive. He's one of the like ghost things that follows you around. He's kind of like a psychic ghost or something. And he gives you a task. He wants you to destroy the WoW, because the WoW is keeping everyone alive, and he finds this horrifying and begs for death.
Little late from Dr.
Better
Hart,
late than never, I guess.
True.
So at this point, you do get a choice, and this is where the horrifying fish come in, because the WoW... Yeah, it's putting structure gel into the ocean, and anything that bumps into the structure gel gets corrupted, and they become like half machine, half flesh beasts.
Real fun. Real fun
cyborgs,
freak fish. I love them.
Yeah, you run into like a wowified
anglerfish,
squid, and an anglerfish. That anglerfish move, like
that
you have to walk.
Anglerfish. That was so funny.
It's so good. You need to follow like some lights because that's the only thing you can really see. And then there's an anglerfish, and it fucking did it get both of you?
Oh, it got me so bad. It was great. Oh,
definitely.
Yeah, I loved it. Like you can read about some like fish populations, and it was like populations of squid look okay, populations of this type of fish also okay, populations of anglerfish unknown. And I was like, oh, okay, so there's going to be some mutant anglerfish. Be aware of that. And then it still got me. Got me.
Just like in nature, it's a very functional biological lure.
For sure. So at this point, you were like running through these facilities, and you have a decision to make on whether you're going to destroy the WoW or not. What did people opt to do? Did you destroy the WoW, Pete?
I destroyed the WoW.
I'm pretty sure I destroyed the WoW.
I did too, though this is the one where if I was going to stay consistent on saying that, life will find a way.
All life is precious.
All life is precious. I shouldn't have destroyed the WoW. I should have just let the WoW. Because, I mean, like you said, Pete, like
hypocrite.
how different is the WoW from the Ark, really?
Yeah, that's why I would have destroyed the Ark too, given the opportunity, but they wouldn't let me.
But yeah, it turns out the structure gel you use to make Simon's second body is like special structure gel that the WoW can't control. And so by pumping it into the WoW, you are preventing the WoW from self-repairing. And so it'll eventually fall into disrepair like everything else. That's the idea, at least. But if you do destroy the WoW, it takes your arm. It bites
Oh,
your arm off.
right.
So that's gross.
Mm,
That's a gross thing that happens.
fun.
And it,
There's finally a downside to putting your arm in robot bells.
yes, yeah, it bites your arm off, and it makes you go slower up and down ladders, only having one arm. But yeah, the doctor also tries to euthanize you after you destroy the WoW. But I think the WoW like bumps into him with a big fish or something. And then we get to the bottom of the ocean and we get to shoot the Ark into space. But the Ark, there's maybe a problem, Pete, with the Ark. The experience of shooting the Ark. What goes on there?
Yeah, Simon, still to the very end. He's done this like
Mhm.
3 times now, and he
He doesn't
still
get it.
doesn't get it. I guess because he was the one who woke up in the new body the last time. But this time, he doesn't wake up in the Ark. He is stuck in Athos, and he is
So pissed.
pissed.
Yeah. So Catherine copies Simon and herself into the Ark. And she sets it up so that the copy into the Ark is tied to the same button that shoots the Ark into space. So you like see the Ark counting down to be shot into space with this space gun. And as that's happening, you can see the upload, basically like it's, like Microsoft deleting a directory or something. It's 10%, 15%, jumps to 30%, stays stalled at 30%. So Simon's just like losing his cool watching these progress bars happen. And the second he's like, why am I not in the Ark? Catherine's like, we've copied you 3 or 4 times now. Why
We've
are you
gone over
still
this.
confused?
We've gone over this
And-
many times.
You're like, bro, we've talked about
Have you considered that you just got lucky a bunch of times in a row? You personally, your consciousness I'm talking to right now.
Yes. And so he starts losing his cool. Catherine dies because it turns out the facility could basically withstand shooting one blast, and then it starts collapsing. So Catherine dies. He's left all alone, and then Simon's, I think, crushed as well. So he does at least get to die instead of being trapped at the bottom of the ocean by himself.
I thought he was just trapped at the bottom of the ocean. I forget if he got crushed.
Well, the facility starts like breaking around him, and then it smash cuts to credits. So I guess he could be alive down there, or he could have died. It's I guess up to interpretation. But then post credits, you get to see what Simon 3 is up to in the Ark. Pete, did you find the Ark compelling at all?
how do I explain this? So like, yes, sense, like everything's pretty, everything looks good, but again, I don't think the art should exist, and I wouldn't have uploaded my brain. So no.
Okay.
I thought the arc was a little if I remember right, I remember being like, "Oh, it's kind of just like a basic bitch paradise." Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Just very like almost like Judeo-Christian, like, oh, beautiful fields and big fluffy clouds in the sky and there's rainbows and it just kind of felt a little like uh what's the word I'm looking for? Bucolic. Kind of like stereotypically
Right.
bucolic and schmaltzy a little bit. Which I thought was just kind of funny. And it's just like, well, sure. Of course someone would program this to be basically that. That's not too surprising. Wasn't there like a city on the horizon or something though?
There's
Yeah, there's some sort of
Alright.
giant like metropolis. But it's weird for Catherine though, because like when she was talking about like the time in life when she felt most peaceful on the rooftops of Taiwan, looking at the city and smelling the like cooking from the street vendors. That's a much more interesting, exciting version of paradise
Yeah.
than, this
Mm.
verdant fields.
Yeah, so that's the thing is like there's fields, there's babbling brooks, there's like forests and all that sort of stuff, but you only got like 50 something people scanned
Yeah.
to
Like,
go
how
on the
long
ark.
is this? How long is this going to be nice for? Like you're going to get
Yeah.
so pissed off at these only 50 people. Like, I feel like, aren't you? There was a bit of a vibe for me that's just like, this is just delaying the inevitable. Like, yes, you're getting shot into space. You have
Oh,
like
100%. Yeah.
solar panels so that your generator never fails. So it's just like you're kind of just trapped in a different prison, aren't you?
Yeah, and you can run into surveys that are like they ask you how you experienced being in the ark or being
Oh
a scan.
yeah.
There's some surveys that are like, hey, do you think that there should be like AI people that are like dumber than people, but will give us someone else to talk to other than the 50 of us? Um, and they're talking about that, like there's no concept of children, there's no concept of like it's a computer, you can't build all the things that exist in the natural world. So at the end of the day, if you were living in World of Warcraft or something, yeah, there's 100 functions, but those are the only 100 functions there will ever be in the
Mhm.
world, right? Like you're not going to invent something new in virtual space when you're trapped in there. So at a certain point, you're going to run out of the stuff that's allowable, right?
Mm.
Like, I don't think they even go into like what parts of human experience could we put into this simulation, right? Like, is there touch? Is there smell?
Yeah, right?
Is there, can you grow? Can you get stronger? Can you get weaker? Like, is there
Can you
sickness? Like,
can you build things or make stuff or have hobbies like,
yeah.
stuff like that? It's just, again, we're running into this theme of choice and agency. Uh,
Hmm.
and it's just they did such a good job weaving it throughout the entire thing. It's just great. What a good game.
For sure. And Catherine, you meet Catherine in the virtual space, and she's got a body, and she's pretty stoked. But she also invented the Ark and didn't seem to like being human very much.
Vibes the whole time. Like in certain places that was disconcerting, which I found to be like really interesting about her character, that she was being helpful, kind of being like an almost Navi type helper in a lot of places and giving you, your quests to do things, and she was pretty personable and stuff like that, but you would get these little glimmers where it's just like, is she a bit of a sociopath?
Yeah, I didn't trust Catherine from the very beginning. Like, I was pretty sure she was sketchy, and I maintain that she is sketchy based on this whole Ark project.
Yeah, it's fair.
And we finish up, we land on the Ark, we get to see this glorious, beautiful, maybe paradise, maybe hell, depending on how you want to frame it. And then we just sort of end blank with Simon's new life.
Wasn't there a final shot of the satellite in space or something? Right.
Yes, drifting aimlessly through space
It was
as
like on
the
fire.
world basically
Yeah.
exploded behind it.
Earth was
Yeah.
truly fucked. Like you're down under the sea the whole
But
time being like, is it really as bad as they say? And at the very last shot is like, oh, yeah, it was really bad, actually.
it might be worse than they
Yee.
let on, honestly. So I think we're left with sort of like one big question towards the end. I think I've made my stance clear. I would not get on the Ark.
I would have that's I don't know. I would have it's been years since I played the game, so I feel like I'm not, I haven't been through the whole, because this game is really training you to get up to that question. It gives you all these different permutations of what it means to be alive and all these sorts of things and ethical quandaries. And like remembering them, I'm just like, oh wow, there was a ton, and there's a ton I'm forgetting. So since I'm not fresh off of that, very curated journey through all of these ethical issues, I feel like I can't I'm not sure if I would or
Mhm.
not. I feel like I'd have to play the game over to have like a better answer for that.
That's fair. It's also easy for me, sitting here in my air conditioned, comfy office chair to be like, oh, of course
Nah.
I wouldn't get on the Ark. It's like if I'm at the bottom of the ocean and the world's
That fucking
exploding around
sucks,
me.
man. I don't wanna be down there. It sucks. Everyone you
It's
know is dead. Nothing cool or nice or comfortable will ever happen again. Man, that bites. I don't know. I don't know if I feel like I might have been one of the people that, did the continuation suicide plan.
All I was going to say was like, I think I would probably choose to be. I need more information. I need to know whether the I need to know whether the people in the Ark can control the Ark. Like, can you at least pilot it? Do you have a chance that some other sentient You could
You
find some
can't.
other sentient life.
You
that
don't have that information.
I know, but
You
I
can't
want
make
to
an
know.
informed decision. That's the whole. I mean, the
Dang
whole
it.
game is about that, man. About making bad, tough decisions with not enough information, right?
Can I choose to delete my consciousness later if the arc is too much of a bummer?
I was
Probably don't know.
curious if because I
Probably.
don't
Yeah, I
know
feel
if
like
I
they would let you.
I just don't remember if there was any note or memo at some point that asks that question. Asks like, can you commit suicide in the arc?
I
Is
don't.
that cool?
There are questions on the survey that say more or less, do you want to
Mm,
die? Now, who takes that survey result?
mm,
I don't know. How do you put that on a
mm.
Likert scale?
It's just
From
Catherine who's like, my arc is perfect. You should be happy.
from 1 to
Wrong.
5, how cool
Yes.
is immortality to you?
Yeah. So I mean, I would probably choose to not go on the arc. It seems like part of being human is dying and being able to accept that. And the arc is fundamentally against that. And it also does not have an alternative for continuation of life, right? There's no ability to build, there's no ability to pass things on, there's no ability to have a next generation. So it's really just how long do you want to play this mini game? And I don't know, I can only play a mini game so long in a video game, let alone if that was all I did all day, constantly just talking to
Yeah.
these insufferable people. And it
Similar
seemed like most
stuff.
of them were insufferable.
Yeah, honestly, similar stuff. Similar
Yeah, none of them
questions
seem
get
like good
raised in
hangs.
the Talos Principle too,
Hmm.
because like all these robots are functionally people and humans, but they can kind of live forever. Is that good? Are they people? When are they not
Yep.
people?
One of our early favorite games
Ugh,
from the
love it.
show. We've did that many
Hmm.
years ago. All right. So, any closing thoughts on Soma before we bid adieu?
If you like Soma, I would highly recommend Amnesia Rebirth, which is also by Frictional. And I feel like it didn't, at least last I checked, I haven't checked it, the Steam reviews in ages, but last I remember, it was kind of not well liked.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know
Hmm.
if that was for good reasons. Because when I played it, I thought, like, this whips. Like, this rules. This is like one of my favorite horror games, like of the last decade, up there with Soma. And I feel like I don't hear people talking about it as fondly as I hear people talking about Soma. But I think it's a pretty good slam dunk. It also has a lot of ethical dilemmas and quandaries, but it's more along the lines of colonialism. And I think maybe a lot of
Ooh,
gamers just didn't want to think about that. Maybe. Yeah.
You don't say.
But that's a very,
wow.
very cool game. I really liked it. The monsters are crazy, wicked, cool, and scary. The voice acting is really incredible. It looks great. And it's not like a billion hours long. The Frictional makes reasonably sized games, which is something I like about this studio. I wish they would make a Silent Hill game. That would rule. Uh, but yeah, that's my recommendation.
Awesome. Pete, any closing thoughts? How was it assembling the Ship of Theseus again?
Yeah, it was good. That's what I was going to say, basically. Like, I know not everybody likes reading philosophy as much as I do. But if you're interested in these sorts of questions, about personhood, survival, identity, all that kind of stuff, you could do a lot worse, and there are a lot less exciting ways to
Mm.
learn about them than playing Oma.
For sure. All
Yeah,
right. Which
if you guys ever cover Amnesia Rebirth, have me back on.
we'll do. We will reach
Most
out.
definitely.
Nice.
So the next podcast game, Em's not here. She's still on continued vacation. So she gave us her game pick though, which I believe was Slay the Princess. Is that correct, Pete?
Ooh!
Yes, sounds
Oh,
right to me.
I've been meaning to play it since it came out in, I want to say, February or something, and now it's like August, and I still haven't done it. But I played the demo of that. It fucking ruled.
Awesome. Well, we will be playing Slay the Princess and be recording a podcast on that in 2 weeks. So, folks who want to play along, go ahead and get it and hop in. Thanks everyone for listening. Reminder, you can get in touch with the show at Deep Listens Pod on Twitter, deeplistens.libsyn.com. We have our comment sections and Deep Listens Podcast. deeplistens@gmail.com. That's our email address. Support the show on patreon.com/deeplistens. And follow Jess at VoidBurger everywhere.
Yep, basically. And listen to my podcast. It's Skull Tenders. That would be great.
All right. Well, thank you, Pete.
Yep.
Thank you,
Thanks
Jess.
for having me. Thank you.
And thank you, listeners. Till next time. Peace.